Salute family and welcome back to another video. This is Blacktruthunited, and today we're going to be covering a serious subject matter, especially pertaining to FBAs. You have a lot of people who want to tiptoe around the issue of abortion, and I'm not one of those people. There's no way you can call yourself pro-black and be pro-abortion. Now family, bear with me for the beginning of this video. I do have to cover quite a bit of context regarding the abortion industry just to give the definitive pro-black stance as it pertains to abortion. Then we'll dig deep into the hidden abortion hustle. And spoiler, it's very sick and demonic. Now when we talk about murder, aka abortion, and our desire to preserve the life of our children, you always have clowns trying to make it seem like we're right-wing extremist bigots. And I don't play those types of games. We don't have to guess why white society is desperate for anti-abortion laws to be passed. Their population numbers are steadily dwindling for a multitude of reasons, and they want to preserve as many of their white children as possible. Don't believe me? Let me let them tell you. And just for context sake, this is after the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Fair use, fair use.
President Trump, on behalf of all the MAGA patriots in America, I want to thank you for the historic victory for life in the Supreme Court yesterday.
Yeah, there's no guesswork over here. So when you have clowns popping up in the comment section talking about why can't we leave race out of it, go ahead and take that over to those alt-right adjacent pundits. Alright, now that that's out of the way, I do want to remind everyone about what I think is one of the most important videos on the channel, which is the first time I covered the topic of abortion, saluting the righteous black woman against abortion. And in it I went into details about the biblical side of things, specifically in the case of Shifra and Puah, who are remembered to this day for fighting against abortion. But I want to remind my audience that throughout the Bible, the targeting of infants is nothing new, especially with white supremacist society. And I don't even have to read the Bible in order to prove this. As soon as the Greeks got into power, they were targeting infants. With the Romans, you have Herod. And of course, exiting the Bible, you have various examples as well, such as the lynching of the Turners and their unborn child. That child was ripped out of Mary's abdomen, and his or her skull was smashed in. And don't get me started on the infants used as gator bait. I mean, just all types of demonic practices that we simply cannot comprehend. Targeting a child who hasn't even been born or can't even speak to defend himself or herself. But there's a reason for this. You see, believe it or not, the white supremacists study the Bible, and they know that life begins at conception. But they won't tell our females that. They want their females to know and uphold that standard. But they don't want our females to know and much less apply the real teachings of the Bible to their lives. I mean, it's so obvious throughout the Bible that from the moment the child is conceived, he or she is considered a human being who needs to be protected. Now, the Bible usually uses the term with child in order to explain this concept. And this is not after they're born. The child is considered a child from the moment of conception. You can look at the phases of human development. Obviously, after a newborn, you would have a toddler, then a child, then an adolescent, and arguably after the adult, you could put elderly there, but the phases of human development don't start when a baby is born. But now I'm going to give definitive proof that the Bible is against abortion, and this is found in the book of Exodus, chapter 21. Verse 22 states, "If men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her." That's talking about the baby and the developmental stage of the fetus. "And yet no mischief follow, he shall be surely punished, according as the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine." This basically means if two men are fighting and a woman gets in the way, women never do that, especially if you're pregnant, and the woman loses her child by getting injured, the man who caused that injury must be held accountable. So that child is still considered a child before he or she is born. And anyone who does harm to that child, including through abortion, will be punished accordingly. And yes, I am aware that there's a federal law protecting unborn children, but we're living in an unjust system of white supremacy, in which the laws are applied however white supremacists see fit. Well, what's the interpretation of a violent act? Well, how do we prove intent? Well, how do we punish people who are doing a medical procedure? There are all types of loopholes to get suspected white supremacists and their allies off the hook. But don't worry, every child will get justice one way or another. The Most High God is just. Just because judgment is delayed doesn't mean that it's not coming. Every black and especially FBA child that they've sought to unalive was, is, and forever will be precious to the Most High God. This is why when you read in the book of Jeremiah about the great prophet Jeremiah, who Christ was mistaken for, a subject for another day, this is what the Most High God told him. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. This is before the prophet Jeremiah was born. He was already sanctified. And this is part of the sick idea in the abortion industry. They want to target babies before they're born in order to prevent the great prophets like Jeremiah, Daniel, Samuel, Moses, Isaiah, and the great women of the Bible such as Deborah and Esther. And even if we talk about recent times, you literally had the COINTELPRO documents talking about preventing the rise of a black messiah. And you should know that this doesn't start with someone making himself well known to the public, being a leader, and giving white supremacists hell. This extends to before a prophet can even be born. This is the sick side of abortion, because especially with FBAs, they're thinking, okay, how can we prevent the next Nat Turner? How can we cut them off from having another Johnny Cochran, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, Malcolm X? Let's unalive them before they even have a chance. Hell, you've even had sitting judges stating that the best place to hate an N-word is to hate him before he's born. And I'd be remiss if I didn't address the exception to the rule people who always pop up talking about the less than 5% of individuals who are getting abortions for reasons other than because they want to, on some my body, my choice nonsense. Now, I know some of you may disagree with me on this. There's no way I would defend essaying or incest, but I don't know of any biblical example in which abortion is justified, and I'm not going to be the one who signs off on someone committing this act. You're going to have to take that up with the Creator, the Most High God. Now, in the case of health risk to either the infant or the mother, again, some of you may disagree, but there are examples through the Bible that we can pull, which talk about when these unfortunate circumstances occur. If you look at the very sad example of Sister Rachel, she passed during childbirth, but she didn't say, I want to live 20 to 40 more years. Rip this baby up. No, she died honorably, and her legacy lived on through her son, named Benjamin, whose descendants will be a part of the royal army of the Most High God. So quote-unquote health concerns are not an excuse for having an abortion, and you can love me or hate me for pointing that out. Also, on a side note, if these people were so concerned about your health, why wouldn't they tell you about the health risks that come from having an abortion? Various studies have confirmed that there is a link between breast cancer and abortion. 51 out of 68 studies showed this, but these studies for the most part are covered up due to political and social interest. And other studies, like the 17 out of 68, would be the ones emphasized so that people don't completely understand the risk. So much for being concerned with one's health. But I digress. Now, what I say next, some people may disagree with. I know the feminists won't like this, but walk with me here for a moment. A man is expected to put his life on the line 24/7, 365. If you're out and about walking, or if you're in the comfort of your home and someone approaches you or breaks in, you're expecting that man to put his life on the line for the family. 100% of the time. There's not a day that goes by when a man's life, at least a man who's worth that title, is not expected to risk life and limb to preserve his family. Yet the one time a woman is expected to put her life on the line to deliver a baby, all of a sudden it's my career or my health or whatever it may be matters more than the baby's. My body, my choice. Which phrase doesn't even make any sense when you understand basic anatomy. But this is a sick mentality that they want us in. And almost every time you bring up the basic morality of saving children who have no way of defending themselves, people come around with the exception to the rule talking points. And to be honest, doctors disproportionately tell our females that they have health concerns so that they unalive their babies at a disproportionate rate. I've heard stories of couples who were told that their baby was going to have a heart defect and just so we got, you might as well get rid of him. They had the baby and there were zero problems with the baby or the mother. But to be fair, sometimes there are medical complications and there are cases of essaying and incest that occur, which is as wicked as it gets, but you won't find any justification in the Bible for committing a separate act than whatever was done to you or whatever may occur with you. And also, if you change the rule for the exceptions to the rule, you'll then have people who really have never been essayed or don't have any health risks claiming that, oh, I've got this problem and this person did this to me without any proof. Wink, wink, nod, nod, and then we're right back in square one. So Again, don't ask me to justify abortions for any reason. That's something you'll have to take up with the creator. But I digress. Now we're going to dive into the racist history behind the abortion industry. And while most people hone in on the founder of Planned Parenthood, this evil witch, Margaretsanger, I want to take things back a little before her evil reign, and even before what would be considered the eugenics movement, by talking about the quote-unquote father of modern gynecology, who I personally refer to as Evil Dr. Sims. I mean, this dude was wicked to the core. He spent most of his days performing all kinds of barbaric experiments on FBA females who were enslaved. And he wasn't using anesthesia, by the way. Cutting and slicing, claiming he knew what he was doing but had no cure, sitting there experimenting with slave after slave, including slaves of others. They would bring him their female slaves as lab rats. And one of his most infamous quotes is that there was never a time that he could not at any day have a subject for operation. Keep in mind, a lot of these females had nothing wrong with it. So while Evil Dr. Sims came before the eugenics movement, his story gives you an idea of the medical industry, especially surrounding gynecology, and how our females have been used as specimens to eventually generate profits and notoriety for individuals. This didn't start with the eugenics movement, but I digress. Now we're going to get into a documentary which I think should be required watching. I have the full documentary on my Patreon. It's called MAAFA 21, MAFA 21, and it talks about how abortion is black genocide. Now we're only going to be seeing a couple of clips from the documentary just to emphasize how deep the racism is with the abortion industry. Fair use, fair use.
We have now reached a point in this country that African American women, though they make up 12% of the population, they account for 37% of the abortions. An African American baby is almost 5 times more likely to be aborted than a white child. The abortion industry at this point kills as many African American people every 4 days as the Klan killed in 150 years. And you can truly say the most dangerous place for an African American to be is in the womb of their African American mother.
This is a sick statistic, and as you saw with the quote-unquote couple entering the abortion clinic, I'm one of the people who will call it straight up the middle. I blame both of them for that decision to abort the baby. I believe it was Dr. Short who coined the phrase abortion getaway driver. That's exactly what those males are, not men. No man and no woman would let their child be chopped up in a blender. Let's let it continue.
All across America, you can stand outside of the abortion clinics and see a steady stream of black women coming in and out. But somewhere along the way, we got the idea that this is a white issue or a conservative issue or a Republican issue, and therefore it's not an issue that we have to be concerned about. This same attitude has allowed Planned Parenthood and other members of the abortion industry to carry out this genocide right under our very noses. Right now, in America, about half of our babies are being killed in the womb. And in certain parts of America, more of our babies are being aborted than are being born.
When 17,000 aborted babies were found in a dumpster outside of a pathology laboratory in Los Angeles, California, some 12 to 15,000 were observed to be black. Irma Clardy Craven, Chairman, Minneapolis Commission on Human Rights and Secretary of the Urban League.
To understand what the agenda was behind the legalization of abortion, all you need to do is look at the statistics from the U.S. government. Studies from the CDC show that prior to the legalization of abortion, approximately 80% of all illegal abortions were done on white women. One study in New York even found that white women had 5 times as many abortions as black women. But at the moment abortion became legal, that began to reverse. And that's why the legalization of abortion was so crucial for the eugenics movement.
How many of you knew that these quote-unquote white women were having way more abortions before it became legal? Hell, they were showing you this in the Heat of the Night movie, which I won't spoil in case you haven't seen the movie. But those who know. Before abortion was legal, white women were the #1 people most likely to commit this demonic act. Let's let it continue.
Legalization created the ability to market abortion in the black community. And from a eugenics standpoint, that changed everything.
These people cannot have it both ways. First, they say that birth control will reduce the number of abortions. Then they flood our neighborhoods with birth control clinics. And what's the result? Our abortion rate skyrockets. So either they lied about the fact that birth control would reduce abortions in our neighborhoods, or this is the results and the purpose they wanted from the beginning. At this point, I truly have the tendency to believe the latter.
Oh yeah, for those who didn't know, that's one of the many tactics that they've used in order to get their grip on the community. Putting up birth control centers where you could get this or that form of birth control for free or for a reduced price. Then all of a sudden the number of abortions skyrockets in that area. Very interesting information for that brother whose name is Pastor Clenard Childress. Let's let it continue.
In 1973, the year abortion was legalized nationwide, Dr. Christopher Tizzi produced a study on abortion demographics at the request of the Population Council, a New York-based eugenics organization. In this report, Tizzi confirmed previous research showing that when abortion is illegal, the abortion rate is much higher for white women than for black women, but that this completely reverses whenever abortion is legalized. At the time he published these findings, Tizzi was a consultant to both Planned Parenthood and the National Abortion Federation.
Other researchers within the eugenics and abortion movements were also documenting that easy access to abortion clinics produces higher abortion rates in the surrounding area. And at least one expert discovered that having a nearby clinic is a bigger factor in the black abortion rate than it is in the white abortion rate. At the same time this data is being circulated, Planned Parenthood and the rest of the abortion lobby were in the process of locating the vast majority of their facilities in minority neighborhoods.
All you have to do to prove the targeting of FBAs for abortion is to look at the location of the Planned Parenthood and other subsidiaries and centers that they put all over our communities. And at the same time, in the white community, they'll put up fertility clinics. These things are not by accident. Let's let it continue.
Then in 1974, a study was released on population control that had been conducted by researchers at 3 major universities. By analyzing data obtained from Planned Parenthood's own records, they determined that the number one factor in deciding whether a county in the United States provided free or low-cost family planning services.
Take a look at this, family. The strongest independent variable was where the FBAs are. What's the percentage of FBAs in this city so we can kill their offspring? That's all these quote-unquote family planning, meaning abortion, centers were considering.
Was not poverty, but race. The researchers said their findings seem to support the contention of many civil rights activists that such programs are less intended to assist the poor than they are to control the growth of the black population.
Birth control and abortion are turning out to be the great eugenic advances of our time. Frederick Osborne, founding member of the American Eugenics Society, 1973.
The best way to hate a nigger is to hate him before he is born. Leander Perez, Louisiana State Judge, 1970.
This is the quote that I showed you before, and I want to point this out. Listen to that last name. Is this the Black and Brown Coalition that we're told about? Let's let it continue.
The abortion law hides behind the guise of helping women, when in reality it will attempt to destroy our people. Brenda Hyson, New York Chapter, Black Panther Party, July 1970.
The racist tells you to take birth control pills to kill, to murder life that might have existed if you had not. They are planning mass extermination of people they consider dispensable. Van Keys, Oakland Chapter, Black Panther Party, 1969.
A true revolutionary cares about the people. He cares to the point that he is willing to put his life on the line to help the masses of poor and oppressed people. He would never think of killing his unborn child. Detroit Chapter, Black Panther Party, 1970.
Hayden had once stated that any African American who supported allowing Planned Parenthood into black neighborhoods was an Uncle Tom.
Into the black community stepped Planned Parenthood, Only when they came into the black community, they've become planned black genocide. William Bowie Hayden, civil rights activist, 1971.
Notice how our revolutionaries were speaking. Back in the day, they weren't on this nonsense of my body, my choice, and abortion is great. They knew that supporting abortion would be the equivalent of co-signing our own destruction, our extermination, which is exactly what it is to this day. There's no way you can call yourself pro-black or pro-FBA and be pro-abortion. And of course, after that documentary came out, you had white supremacists very angry. Their columns, particularly their left-leaning columns, were calling the documentary pseudo. That's pseudo. Sound familiar? Maybe one of these days I'll do a video addressing that cowardly talking point, which has been used to discredit solid, reliable information. But I digress. Now let me play this clip from Pastor Childress, who addresses the eugenics portion of the abortion industry, because he reminds us that while today we will be talking about the financial incentives behind abortion, we must not forget that at its core, its industry is hell-bent on what we just reviewed, the specific targeting of foundational black Americans. This may sound crazy to some of you, but that old saying is true that sometimes it's not about the money. Fair use, fair use.
And unfortunately, we're not looking beneath the surface. We have to understand that Planned Parenthood is very good at putting a very, very acceptable veneer on their true agenda. And you have to dig. But upon digging, you'll be horrified to know that they are only fulfilling an ideology that began with its inception, which is Margaretsanger's eugenic plan to exterminate, to reduce, to create genocide with nationalities or ethnic groups that they felt were inferior. The key thing to understand is that this is what they believe. I used to believe that this was all about money. Now it is about money for many, but with the core group of eugenics believers and the brain trust of Planned Parenthood, it's ideology.
This is the truth regarding the abortion industry. It's not always about money. And now there is one very sad clip from this particular interview that I do need to share because it's pertinent to this topic. Sometimes we have to hear sick, graphic things in order to be aware of just how evil this practice is. Fair use, fair use.
Amy Johnson, a CEO, one of the leaders of Planned Parenthood, she had her own clinic. I forgot her position, and actually saw the abortion through the sonogram and quit the next day out of conscience. She actually saw the child fight off the scalpel. And that to me, you know, is basically sums it up, what is going on and why we do what we do. It's a sad epitaph on right now on the legacy of this nation when it comes to this, and that's why it has to be turned around.
No, family, your ears did not deceive you. That baby was fighting for its life. It knew what was going on, and some sick demonic doctor was up there slicing and dicing, most likely for not only the eugenics purpose, but also with some financial bonuses in mind, which we're about to get into. Because when I use the term baby butchers, I really do mean that. This is the closest way to describe what is going on. Just like at a butcher shop, how they have different cuts of meat with different prices that you can select from, you can request a certain portion of an animal, a shoulder, or whatever it may be that you're interested in. That you have demonic doctors profiting off of the abortion industry by chopping up and selling different organs and tissues from the babies who are being aborted. And by the end of this video, there's not going to be any dispute left about if this is happening or not. So what I'm showing you here are documents from the anti-abortion group fifedynamics, which did some undercover reporting in the early 2000s. I believe this came out in 2007. But as you can see, you have pamphlets advertising fetal tissue shipped to your specifications. You have ads like newspaper ads talking about harvesting organs. A lot of times we talk about brothers and sisters who are unalived and their organs go missing under suspicious circumstances, but we're not talking about all the babies who are unalived and their organs are taken. And yes, this is definitive proof. I mean, they have emails and handwritten notes asking for certain body parts the thalamus and the liver, legs, all types of sick demonic stuff. And these companies are putting in bids pretty much in order to get these body parts from aborted babies. And this is just one piece of proof that I have. Here you have the shipping documentation. I mean, they went really in depth in making sure that they had their information exposed. You have logs exposing just organ after organ being sold to these companies. And you know, Planned Parenthood and other organizations had the nerve to try to discredit this report with a whole bunch of lies about people being paid and the data being fabricated. I mean, just blatant lies. But again, don't worry, this is just the physical evidence. Now we're going to get into the video evidence, which cannot be disputed. And as a disclaimer, I will put a content warning up. Some of this content that we're going to go through is going to be very disturbing. This clip is from the year 2000. This is ABC reporting on this back in 2000. It's very difficult footage to find, and I want to say that this is fair use, fair use.
Let's say someone needs feet. Feet are real common. They're not hard to get. If you have a guy that's desperate for, let's say, a heart, then he'll pay you whatever you ask.
What does a brain go for? What does a kidney or a liver go for?
It's market force. It's what can you sell it for. We had projections of $50,000 a week. And, you know, in some weeks you can hit that, in some weeks you can't. It's just a matter of being able to match supply and demand.
$50,000 a week. Tell me that this is not a baby butcher shop. Let's let it continue.
That one fetus, the cost of procuring it is the same whether you get one kidney or you get two kidneys, a lung, a brain, a heart. It's the same cost that you put into it.
But you keep charging.
Each researcher gets charged.
And each time, that's just money in the bank.
Mm-hmm. If you have someone trained to ask properly, you can get 80-90% consent rates. You can control the flow. It's probably the equivalent of the invention of the assembly line.
Yeah, these doctors are sickos, calling their abortion clinic an assembly line. Again, baby butchers exposed. There's a lot of cash in this industry. Even if they're only paying $75 or $100 for a particular part that they want, they have shipping costs, procurement fees, all types of things that bring in all types of money for these abortion clinics. Now, most of the next clips that I'll be showing come from a person whose name is daviddaleiden. And while you may disagree with some of this individual's views, there's no doubt that he has been leading the charge, at least in modern times, as far as abortion journalism. So I'm willing to give credit where credit is due. Now, with all that being said, I want to say that this next clip is fair use, fair use.
You have to use a consent form. You know, the patients, when you consent them for the donation, you have to get the form.
The abortion patients have to give permission for
They have to give permission, yes. Yeah. And, you know, I think that's really important. You know, you don't just go and, you know, donate blood or anything.
Without signing a consent form
without signing
first,
a consent form. It's just basic logic. And if there was like a high gestated fetus, I mean, I had witnessed there was no consent signed and these women didn't know that it was getting taken. It was stealing. It's stealing baby parts.
So you're saying sometimes if there was a fetus that was especially high gestation, and we're talking above 15 weeks, above 16 weeks?
Probably 14 to 17, 18.
14 to 17 or 18. And so it's a higher gestation, it's, you know, particularly valuable body parts or particularly intact body parts. And so some of the other STEM Express technicians would actually just go and take whatever the body parts were that they knew they needed to fill orders that day, even though the patient who had had that abortion had not signed the consent form to agree to a donation.
Exactly.
This is some sick stuff. These abortion clinics are infamous for not telling the mother that her child's organs will be used to bring more profits in to the abortion clinic. And I also want you to notice that the later the abortion, the more valuable the specimen, because the organs are more developed. So I don't know this for a fact, but you could imagine a doctor taking special interest in females who are closer to delivering that baby. They become a target. And who knows, maybe they intentionally schedule the abortion to be later so that they can collect more valuable specimens. These people are sickos. Let's let it continue.
And there were a couple times to where I had consented a woman And someone were comfortable with it, and they thought it was good and made them feel better about their situation. But some were really, really creeped out. There were things on that form that it didn't make sense. On the form, there's two things that concerned me. It said
the STEM Express procurement technicians would use a Planned Parenthood form to get permission from the patients to donate their fetal tissue after the abortion.
Yeah, it says right here, before I was shown this consent, I had already decided to have an abortion and signed a consent form for it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these women have not done that.
As you can see, they have all types of tricks and traps in order to get these organs with little to no consent. Let's let it continue.
They don't know yet. They're still sitting in the waiting room. They haven't signed anything. It's terrible, and this is a bad form.
Alright, so now I'm going to play another portion of that interview in which the woman is talking about her experience with procuring organs, and specifically when a medical technician either unknowingly or intentionally threw away her valuable specimens. In other words, the remains of a baby. Fair use, fair use.
I went to the head nurse at the clinic and I said, hey, I keep telling this medical assistant I need this, and I think she's throwing my stuff away on purpose. And she got really upset. And she called the medical assistant back there, and now I'm looking back at it, I think that some of the staff at some of these clinics knew exactly what was going on, that they were getting compensated by, you know, the tissues.
That STEM Express was
Exactly.
paying them for the fetal tissue.
Exactly. So I'm pretty sure that's what was going on, and that's why she got so upset, like, hey, we need this money. You know, we're losing money here.
These are some demonic, money-hungry predators.
We need to let them get the samples.
Yeah.
We're getting paid for this.
Do you remember what that clinic manager said to the medical assistant? Or?
I just heard, we need the money. You need to let her. That's what I heard. I asked about, you know, the financial situation, and Jessica didn't want to let me know that either.
Yeah, they didn't want her to know anything. And by the way, she doesn't work for Planned Parenthood. She works at a separate company called STEM Express, which worked in collusion with various abortion clinics. So just to add context to this, let's let it continue.
One piece of evidence that I wanted so badly when I was doing the undercover work is I really wanted to get like the actual original contract that STEM Express had signed with Planned Parenthood Marmonte. Finally, because of the congressional investigations, the original STEM Express contracts with Planned Parenthood actually got released and came to light. And it defines the POC, a product of conception, in the contract as any fetal organ. And then Planned Parenthood will invoice STEM Express every month based on the number of harvestable POCs that have been obtained at the Planned Parenthood clinics in that month. You know, in that contract, it looks like, based on the language, that POC means individual fetal organ, and that means Planned Parenthood was getting paid for every individual body part that STEM Express was harvesting. Other people and STEM Express lawyers have tried to say, oh no, you know, we promise it was only, you know, per abortion. So that makes it a little bit better, maybe not totally better, but did you ever get any sense of how that compensation was structured, or what?
I don't believe that was true, because we, as procurement technicians, got our bonuses based on organ, not per abortion.
The bonuses that the techs were paid was based on the organ, on per individual body part, not based on the entire abortion.
Yes.
Is anyone still questioning whether this is going on at these abortion industries? And just how they know that our organs are superior, generally speaking, as adults, that's no different than the organs of these infants. Let's let it continue.
Yep. Based on body part, blood sample, not just one abortion.
So at a big Planned Parenthood clinic like the Alameda in San Jose or B Street in Sacramento, on a day that STEM Express was there, did you guys basically handle everything in the path lab? And so after every abortion, you guys were the ones rinsing the POC out, doing the check to make sure the arms, legs, cal, and spinal cord were there, show the doctor?
80-90% of the time.
Wow. So you were doing work that a Planned Parenthood medical assistant would normally do?
Yes.
So you were doing some of their work for them, and then you were harvesting the body parts that you needed, and then STEM Express would pay Planned Parenthood for those body parts they had harvested.
Yep. Like I was saying to her, to say there's the shipping, but Planned Parenthood never shipped anything. We did all the shipping.
Now, I don't want to speed past that point right there. Planned Parenthood is working with this company called STEM Express in order to handle the procurement of baby body parts. And some of you may be asking, why do they do that? Why not just handle it themselves? And this is the sick portion of a lot of these companies, which if you're in business, you know all about this. The word is liability, especially legal liability, for Planned Parenthood, who's been under pressure by mostly the political right, with threats of defunding and shutting down different clinics based on the state. They figure it's better to transfer that liability to another company so that they handle the more controversial stuff, and then if any legal case ensues, they can put the blame on the fall company. In other words, they reduce and in some cases eliminate their legal liabilities by using a separate company. And the people at the top could easily invest in STEM Express or any other agency. This stuff is nothing new. But I digress. Let's listen to this next part and prepare to be disgusted about their shipping methods. Fair use, fair use.
Shipping, we'd have our supplies in a certain part of the room. We'd have our STEM Express tape and our little boxes and our ice packs, and come to find out you're not supposed to ship body parts.
Via FedEx, right?
Yeah,
you guys ship it via FedEx.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we would drive and we would drop them off at like a drop site. And I remember one time, this was towards the end of when I was working, I was at the Alameda with Jessica, and we agreed to go drop off some of the specimens. And the guy, for some reason, she was acting kind of weird because we both went in to go drop it off. And the guy behind the counter kind of is looking at her funny. And she goes, I want to ship this here. And he looks at her and says, what's in the package? She goes, does it matter? He's like, yeah, because I know what's in that package. I'm not shipping it. And it's like
Wow.
She probably told him or something. Like they'd had a past, or he'd found out somehow what was in the package, and he refused to ship it. So she got upset, and we went outside and said, why wouldn't he ship the package? She's like, oh, because he knows what's in here. You're technically not supposed to ship body parts.
Jessica said that.
Yeah, and she said, I gotta go all the way across town to a different FedEx and drop this off.
Yes, family, this is very disturbing. You may have thought that FedEx driver was delivering pecans and iPods, but no. These FedEx delivery drivers were literally shipping dead babies' body parts, which was against their policy, and if I'm not mistaken, against the law. But we all know how that quote-unquote law works with the system of white supremacy. Let's let it continue.
I'm like, I asked her, I wanted to go home at that time. I live in Sacramento. I was going to drive home from San Jose. I'm like, do I really need to go with you? She's like, no, I'm just going to take it over to, the hub or the drop-off site across town. You can just go home. And I thought, I'm like, I didn't know that you weren't allowed to ship things like that. I guess you can't. Some of the tissues we weren't able to procure because they were already dead tissues. So let's say a woman comes in for a medication abortion, and sometimes it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, the baby will, it's kind of hard to describe. It'll die, and at the reaspiration is when they go in and they have to suction the remains out. And NFT, no fetal heart tones, we can't use that. It's technically dead tissue.
Right.
So we also had to communicate that with the medical assistants. There were a couple times to where I'd have a specimen that I was waiting to come out, and I'd go and did the path lab, and the medical assistant would say, you can't use this one. This is a, NFT.
An NFT is no fetal heart tones. So at STEM Express, you could only procure from fetuses who had been alive right before the abortion.
Yes.
This is some evil stuff. I want to summarize what was just stated. If the baby had died from some kind of medication, or let's just say it was a stillborn, they couldn't use those parts. It would have to be a baby who could have survived in order for them to procure those organs. These are baby butchers. But don't worry, there's more to be exposed. Now we're going to go into the other undercover operations, in which, from what I understand, different teams got together and interviewed different medical providers in order to get an idea of what their practices were. So before I get started, I want to say that this is fair use. Fair use.
If that provider is needing to change the technique a little bit, and I know I'm going against my side of this, but I'm okay with, no, I want you to be paid per specimen, and rather than, oh, here, just ship this off. No, this is what we're looking for, and if you can do that and it compensates you and financially that's helping you to grow your clinic, I'm willing to do that.
And so if we alter our process and we are able to obtain intact fetal cadavers, then we can make it part of the budget that any dissections are this, and splitting the specimens into different shipments is this. I mean, it's all just a matter of probably have an edge over other organizations. Our organization has been doing research for many, many, many years, and we've had studies in which the company, or in the case of the investigator, has a specific need for a certain portion of the products of conception. We deviate from our standard in order to do that. We can get creative about when and where and under what conditions can we interject something that is specific to the tissue procurement needs.
She's speaking in kind of like medical lingo, so I'll break it down for those who aren't catching what's being said. She's essentially saying that she'll change the way that she performs the operation in order to make sure that she can rip out certain organs. So in other words, instead of cutting here, she'll cut there. If they're looking for a spinal cord, you see what I'm saying? It's just sickening. I mean, this stuff, for any real human being who has a care for our children, this not only makes your stomach turn, but it infuriates you. And this doctor and other doctors that will be coming up just talk very casually about this, like it's no big deal. Let's let it continue.
Can you get creative? Can you alter if we say we need a liver?
Or not just liver, thymus, but let's say neural tissue is very difficult because
could you adjust the procedure if you knew, okay, they need high volume of this, you could do that?
Yeah, I think we can. I mean,
yeah, this is what's going on. That was one of many short clips that we have. Let's keep it rolling. Fair use, fair use.
But they need like the liver mostly and the
we could pay you $1,000 up to $1,500 for a liver.
Yeah.
Because that's in such high demand from our.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. This is great. But I think financial incentive from you guys is going to be like to the people we have to get this approved. We'll be very happy about it.
It was like 6 months or a year ago you told me about the proposition, and so now every time I do a DNA, I'm like, oh, there's some love.
Yeah, you already know. Yeah. I don't know if she's FBA or not, but this is the reason why when I did the B1 Rolodex, I was very careful as far as the OBGYNs that I added. And yes, I did notice a trend that a lot of non-FBAs were more abortion-centered OBGYNs while I was doing that research. But yeah, you can't just trust a doctor just because he or she looks like you. Let's let it continue.
I'm doing a procedure, and I'm seeing that I'm in fear that it's about to come to the umbilicus. I might ask for a second set of forceps. Hold the body at the cervix and pull off the leg.
Oh, so you gotta, okay.
So it's not
right.
Yeah. This is why we don't just trust anyone who has doctor in front of his or her name. She was talking just as casually as the white doctors about pulling off legs. Let me move over here and grab this lung, take this kidney out. I mean, just sickening. And this is what is going on. The baby butchers are being exposed. Let's keep it going. Fair use, fair use.
And are we agreed that $100 would keep you happy?
Well, let me agree to find out from other affiliates in California what they're getting. And if they're getting substantially more, then we can discuss it then.
Yes.
But the money is not the important thing.
No,
it has to be big enough that it's
but it is something to talk about. I mean, it's one of the first things that you brought up, right? So
we're able to get a liver thymus pair, maybe that is $75 per specimen, and so that's for for liver thymus pair, and that's $150 versus if we can get liver thymus brain hemisphere and all that, then and then so that protects us so that we're not paying for what we can't use.
Let me just figure out what others are getting, and if this is in the ballpark, and that's fine. If it's still low, then we can talk about it. You would. I want a Lamborghini. I said I want a Lamborghini.
Yeah, this is why some people side-eye those who ride around in Lamborghinis and are flashy with their wealth. Sometimes this is the type of stuff that they did to get this or that thing. A sick, evil creature sitting up plotting her retirement off of chopping up, packaging, and selling baby organs. Let's let it continue.
Don't we all, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but we're not all willing to commit evil acts to get the things that we want in life. These people are soulless. Let's get the next clip. Fair use. Fair use.
Yesterday was a clinic day. So for example, like, what did you procure?
You know, I asked her at the beginning of the day what she wanted. Yesterday she's been at, a lot of people want intact parts these days because they're looking for specific nodes. AB nodes, SA. I was like, wow, I didn't even know. Good for them.
These people are so divorced from compassion and basic human decency that she's literally here whining and dining, talking about ripping out children's hearts. And if those hearts had this node or that node, there's a special place in hell for these demons. Let's let it continue.
Yesterday was the first time she said people wanted lungs. And then, like I said, always as many intact livers as possible. People just want
livers.
Some people want lower extremities too, which that's simple. I mean, that's easy. I don't know what they're doing with it. I guess they want muscle.
Yeah, a dime a dozen.
I think it helps to have a relationship with the provider because if you do, you can have this conversation with them.
Exactly.
You can say, this is what this is what we're looking for today. You know, what we did for a while, and I think it worked pretty well, is if there was a trainee, I would just basically say, any research case, I'm going to do. And as you get better, I'll let you do more of those cases. But we really need to try to do this.
Yeah, we need liver, and we'd prefer, you know, an actual liver, not a bunch of shredded up, or especially brain is where it's actually really a big issue. Hemispheres need to be intact. It's a big deal with neural tissue and the progenitors because those are particularly fragile.
I'd say a lot of people want liver, and for that reason, most providers will do this case under ultrasound guidance, so they'll know where they're putting their forceps.
Yeah, when we talk about serial killers or hitmen and hitwomen, these are the people, in my opinion, that we need to talk about. They're doing the same work just by a different name. This is some sick stuff, talking about where to put the forceps so they'll know how to clamp down and preserve certain organs while ripping out the other parts of the baby. I mean, just a complete witch. Let's let it continue.
Then a rate-limiting step of the procedure is calvarium. Calvarium, the head is basically the biggest part. Most of the other stuff can come out intact. I've been very good at getting heart, lung, liver, because we know that, so I'm not going to crush that part. I'm going to basically crush below, I'm going to crush above, and I'm going to see if I can get it out intact.
This is how these demons speak in their free time, talking about crushing up a live baby, that in order to preserve the organs, the child has to be a viable one that would be birthed essentially perfectly, if not disturbed by this wicked practice. Let's keep going. Fair use, fair use.
Okay, so when you are, or the affiliate is determining what that is monetary.
Yes.
So that it doesn't raise any question of this is what it's about. This is the thing. What price range would you?
You know, I'm going to throw a number out. I would say it's probably anywhere from $30 to $100, depending on the facility and what's involved. And I think for affiliates, the end of the day, they're a nonprofit. They just don't want to. They want to break even, and if they can do a little better than break even and do so in a way that seems reasonable, they're happy to do it.
Yep, this is murder for hire, hitman work, and it's being exposed right now. Now with this next one, I will warn you, don't eat anything while you're watching this. It is up on YouTube, so I don't want to hear YouTube saying that I violated some kind of community guidelines when this is clearly being shown on someone else's YouTube channel. So fair use and content warning. Very disturbing stuff.
So the intestine is right here. Right here, see?
Yeah.
This comes out, like I said, the organs come out really, really well because you can see all the intestine pretty much almost like
this is a big placenta right here.
Yes.
Do you ever see thymus?
This case is really important. Whenever we do like the 20-22 weekers we do, you get a lot better.
But it's difficult to find thymus at this at this gestation?
Yeah. What is the age of this? This patient was like 18 weeks, I think. She was like 18 weeks or so. But this was also a minor.
Oh, so this wouldn't be for collection because
Yeah, it's a minor.
Is this? This is limb. Okay,
Yeah,
and this is like scapula.
Yeah.
Back there. Got it.
So like with her, like the reason she had to wait so long was because originally she didn't have parental consent, so she was going through a judicial bypass process.
Yeah, you just witnessed the organs and the remnants of an abortion that was committed. They were probing through the different specimens that could be acquired via these organ sales. Just disgusting. Alright, we'll have to push through the rest. Fair use and content warning on this one as well.
Advanced Bioscience Resources is the oldest known organization that harvests and sells aborted baby body parts. They've been doing this since 1989, the same year that I was born. That means that the first kids they parted out and sold would be my age today if they had not been killed by the lethal intersection of abortion, organ trafficking, and fetal experimentation. The first undercover video I ever filmed for CMP's investigation was with ABR's procurement manager, Perrin Larton. Here's what she said under oath about that video.
Ms. Larton, do you recognize the individual depicted on the video?
Yes.
And who was that?
That's me.
And does this appear to be the same conversation we were just discussing previously?
Yes.
Okay. We will play a little bit of the video and ask questions afterwards, as we've been doing before.
See, this is what needs to happen with all these characters involved. They all need to be put on the stand with all types of evidence, criminally prosecuted, and thrown in prison or unalived for these evil deeds. But don't worry, justice is coming, so let it continue.
You know, of even close to like whole organ transplant for the mice, you know, because you can actually reconstitute the immune system that much better and that much more authentically if you're not just doing like mashed up little, you know, cell bits, you know.
And the problem with that is they don't come out intact.
Oh, they don't?
Not open. There's not closed abdomen. They're it's always pulled apart.
Really?
Yeah. That's the whole point is not to have a live birth.
Okay.
And so the doctors have unless it's somebody who has had 6 pregnancies and 6 vaginal deliveries.
And then it just kind of pops out.
They put lambs in and she comes in the next morning. And I literally have had women come in and they'll go to the OR and they're back out in 3 minutes. I'm like, what's going on? Oh yeah, the fetus was already in the vaginal canal whenever we put her in the stirrups, it just fell out.
Wow.
So, you know, because if they've had a lot of births, then that's kind of what happens.
Right.
And then, Ms. Larton, do the fetuses occasionally have a closed abdomen?
Yes.
Okay. And then in those circumstances, how frequently do they have a closed abdomen?
Oh, I don't know. Once a month, maybe.
There's a reason why this person is asking these questions. This is a very unique scenario in which the baby is almost encapsulated, as you just saw, and therefore should be considered born and not eligible for an abortion. Let's let it continue.
And then in those circumstances, is it a situation where the fetus just fell out, as had been discussed at the end of the clip, or is it some other reason?
No, they just, sometimes they fall out. As I said in the video, it's depending on the woman. Women are all different. Some women labor for 24 hours to have their baby, and some people labor for 24 minutes. So
certainly. And in the situation, and then how frequently would, you mentioned the fetus falling out situation, how frequently would that occur in your estimation?
I don't know, once every couple months.
So in a normal situation, you've said the surgeon certifies the completeness of the procedure, and then the technician goes and procures the tissue.
And the
technician then goes to procure the tissue. In a situation where the fetus falls out, does the same thing happen?
Certainly.
Okay. When the fetus falls out, is anything done to the fetus by the surgeon in your estimation? Is the entire fetus intact in the lab when the procurement technician enters the lab?
Yes.
Okay. how does a tissue procurement occur in one of these situations when the entire fetus is intact in the lab?
We do dissection.
And just to be clear, you do dissection to obtain the tissues that are on the list for the day?
We do dissection to get the tissues that the researchers have requested, yeah.
In other words, even though the baby is encapsulated and fully intact, they still grab their scalpels and slice and dice the baby for organs afterwards, which should be illegal.
They are, I mean, they have a heartbeat, don't they, at the point they would fall out?
Objection. This witness isn't in the room when that happens. This witness is not a doctor. This witness is not here to testify about the medical or biological conditions of the fetus when it's eliminated from the mother.
That lawyer had to step in because she knows where this line of questioning is going. If that baby had a heartbeat, you're literally slicing up a newborn child, which by law on the books now would be considered murder. Let's let it continue.
And by not alive, do you mean that they were not moving?
Correct.
And do you mean that they did not have a heartbeat?
It would depend.
Okay. And when you say it would depend, what do you mean?
I can see hearts that are not in an intact POC that are beating independently.
The Federal Born Alive Infants Protection Act mandates that the U.S. Code apply equally to an infant born alive at any gestational age, even after an abortion. The federal law defines born alive as a fetus with a beating heart. A fetus that just falls out with a beating heart is a human being equally entitled to all protections of federal law. Placing an order for body parts from a born-alive infant uses the means of interstate commerce to obtain the death of a human being through organ harvesting. If the federal law is applied equally to born-alive infants, this is murder for hire under Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Section 1958.
Indeed, murder for hire. Hitman. That's what we're dealing with here. Butchers procuring their favorite cuts. Old demons. Let's let it continue.
Is that true that you've had a patient deliver in the operating room a non-viable fetus?
I'm sure I have.
What do you mean by a non-viable fetus?
A fetus that's not capable of survival.
And how do you define that?
I don't define that. Viability is, well, I do define that sometimes.
Okay, so...
There's many criteria you can use to determine viability.
And what are those criteria?
Depends on where you work.
Now family, if you're a professional in this industry, shouldn't there be universal definitions of what is viable? I don't buy that this changes depending on where you work. She's just trying to be slick in order to give herself an out. Let's let it continue.
Okay, where you work. What are those criteria where you work?
Viability is determined on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, and what are the criteria you use to evaluate viability?
You can use different things: estimated fetal weight, gestational age, the health of the fetus, the availability of interventions.
And based on those criteria, you make the determination as to whether the fetus is viable or non-viable?
On a case-by-case basis, the physician determines if a fetus is viable, yes.
You've never been alerted of that situation in your 25 years at Orange County?
One time, maybe 20 years ago, I don't honestly remember, there was such a situation and I was made aware of it.
These people are evil to the core. Fork-tongued, slithering bastards who do all their dirt and then rush to do a cover-up. If this was truly a just system, almost every single person we've seen would be in prison or 6 feet under. Let's let it continue.
So in the situation you described 20 years ago, do you know what your staff did to, if anything, to tend to that fetus? Did they call 911?
Objection, calls for speculation, beyond the scope, irrelevant.
I have only vague recollection of it. I know they kept it warm and comfortable for the very brief period that it was alive. I don't think there was even time to call 911. It was a matter of seconds.
That doesn't matter because however long the baby is alive, these medical professionals have to swear an oath to protect that life. And none of these people should be practicing, physicians or medical professionals. Let's let it continue.
Is that the protocol? Just keep it warm and comfortable?
Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence. Lacks foundation. Calls for speculation.
This is something that every obstetrician gynecologist deals with on rare occasion. I'm not a medical doctor. I've never been in such a situation. It is their medical judgment what to do in that circumstance.
Oh, please. That guy is heavily involved. Now all of a sudden no one knows anything. When in the back rooms, these people are making deals, plotting on how to get their next Bugatti or mansion in the hills. Okay, so now that we're done reviewing a lot of the evidence of the people who were interviewed and secretly recorded and occasionally put on the stand, I want to get into one of the most sick examples, which is coming out of the University of Pittsburgh. And later on in this story, you'll hear how there's racial targeting involved with these organ and tissue procurements. Now, before I get started, I want to say that this is fair use, fair use.
Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. What is a vehicle from a tissue procurement company linked to the University of Pittsburgh doing outside a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic with coolers, especially after the university swore under oath that it does not harvest fetal organs from Planned Parenthood? That's what Daviddaleiden, investigative journalist and president of the Center for Medical Progress, wants to know.
Once again, everyone's lying, everyone's pretending like this isn't going on, and these stories keep coming out. This one is in 2022. An organ procurement vehicle parked at a Planned Parenthood. And that vehicle is directly linked to the University of Pittsburgh with coolers. We all know what was going on. Let's let it continue.
Those images were captured by a pro-life advocate with the organization 40 Days for Life in Pittsburgh. We'll talk to the woman who took the video in just a moment, but for now, we have Daviddaleiden on the line. David, thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, Kara, wonderful to be with you.
Great. So as you note, the University of Pittsburgh swore under oath that it does not harvest fetal organs from Planned Parenthood. So can you catch our viewers up to speed as to why the university was made to go under oath in the first place and kind of the context for the scene that we're seeing?
Sure. So let me set it up for you. About a year ago, last year in May, the University of Pittsburgh was called to testify under oath at a legislative hearing that the Pennsylvania House of Representatives Health Committee was having in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I testified under oath at that hearing as well about my findings so far in Center for Medical Progress's investigative research and investigative reporting about fetal experimentation sponsored by taxpayers, sponsored by the federal government, that's been happening at the University of Pittsburgh for decades at this point. At that hearing, the University of Pittsburgh's representative swore under oath, swore to tell the truth, and testified that the University of Pittsburgh was not harvesting aborted fetuses from Planned Parenthood in downtown Pittsburgh. Now, just last week, witnesses and advocates outside of the Planned Parenthood abortion clinic in downtown Pittsburgh photographed and videotaped a University of Pittsburgh linked organ harvesting company, Core.
This is why I don't trust these hospitals and universities. I don't like supporting their sports teams or anything like that. These people will lie under oath, allegedly, and continue doing whatever they want, with the added bonus of not being punished. Let's let it continue.
Parked in the front driveway of the Planned Parenthood abortion clinic, with the Core representative carrying out specimen bags containing specimen tubes and storing them in a cooler in the back of the Core vehicle. So this is a huge question. If they're not harvesting aborted fetal organs at the Planned Parenthood abortion clinic in Pittsburgh, what is Pitt's organ harvesting company doing parked in the driveway with coolers?
And when we talk about these experiments, I mean, these are very gruesome experiments. They were almost Frankenstein-esque. We're talking these aborted babies. Sometimes their scalps were being taken and were being transplanted onto lab mice. Can you explain for us some of the experimentation going on? And like you said, I think it was under Fauci that some of this taxpayer money was going to them.
This is evil incarnate. You're about to hear some of the most wicked stuff you've ever heard in your life regarding what they do with this fetal tissue and these organs. And before I proceed, I want to remind everyone of the scripture in Matthew 18 that states, "But whoso shall offend one of these little ones, which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea." This would be the justice if these doctors, scientists, administrators, and CEOs were held accountable. Let's let it continue.
Exactly. It looks clear that the University of Pittsburgh lied under oath at the legislative hearing in Pennsylvania a year ago. So then the next question is, why did they feel the need to lie? Well, probably because the University of Pittsburgh has been the hub for some of the most barbaric experiments being done on aborted children, sponsored by the federal government, paid for with taxpayer dollars for decades. And just a few examples of these, as you mentioned, the infamous scalping study, where the scalps of aborted babies, by the way, intact scalps, so the skulls, the heads of the babies would have to be intact when they were ripped out of the womb and then scalped for this organ harvesting experiment where Pitt scientists took the scalps, stitched them onto lab rats to keep them growing, to do different kinds of drug testing on. This was funded by a grant from Dr. Fauci's agency at the NIH, the NIAID. It was funded by multiple grants from the NIH.
No, family, your ears did not deceive you. This is what they're doing, in some cases, with these dead babies' organs. And I can't help but recall what happened in Holmesburg Prison, which is not too far away from the University of Pittsburgh. I would guess a 5-hour drive away. And this is something I would recommend looking up in your free time. There's a book and there's also a documentary which came out exposing Dr. Kliegman and his demonic lab rat laboratory. And this is not too far off from what we covered earlier in the broadcast. Remember Dr. Sims and all the experiments he did on the FBA females. And that's why when people try to bring up the Nazi medical experiments and get us to cry a bucket of tears, not acknowledging that they weren't the only ones who were doing the experimentation during World War II. You also had the Japanese Unit 731. I'll let you look that one up on your free time. But just like all these wicked acts that occur worldwide, instead of people being punished appropriately, as in death, the doctors and scientists were rewarded, given statues. In the case of the Nazi scientists, preserved through Operation Paperclip. Same thing with Unit 731. Those demonic doctors got full immunity thanks to the U.S. government wanting that research data. So it shouldn't surprise you that they would go this far into experimenting with dead babies. Let's let it continue.
That's just one recent example of the barbaric fetal experimentation at the University of Pittsburgh. Another one was a deal going on for a couple of years where the University of Pittsburgh was receiving millions of dollars from the NIH in exchange for supplying the most pristine, intact fetal kidneys to a special NIH program called the Good Map Project.
The NIH, the CDC, and organizations, especially like WHO, that go international, are some of the most wicked on planet Earth. And what he said was a lot more serious than you may be thinking.
In their grant application to the NIH, advertising why Pitt should get these millions of dollars in taxpayer funding grant awards, the University of Pittsburgh promised that they would take steps to record and track the exact time that circulation, that blood flow was lost to the fetal kidneys, and that they would take steps to keep that loss of blood flow, the ischemic time, to a minimum. And they said that they would be doing this using labor induction abortion. So if you put all those together, in plain language, what the University of Pittsburgh was advertising to the NIH to get millions of dollars in taxpayer funding was that they were going to deliver these children alive and then kill them by cutting their kidneys out for experimentation. So that's why the University of Pittsburgh probably feels like they have to lie under oath even to avoid telling the truth about the grotesque and barbaric experiments that they've been conducting on aborted children in direct partnership with Planned Parenthood in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I, like you, am looking for the prison sentences or death penalties for all these people involved. But like most situations, especially when it involves white people, hardly anyone is punished. The next time people bring up what the Germans did and what the Chinese are doing by using their prisoners for organs, which yes, they are doing, but the next time they try to wag their finger at other countries and organizations, throw this in their face. Alright, let's let it continue.
Almost incredible and crazy that we are even having this discussion. Like, so what are we? It's a Thursday night, I think. Just on a Thursday night, yeah, you know, they kept those babies alive as long as possible to then harvest their organs. I mean, it's absolutely grotesque. And the fact that, you know, we'll talk about this, but it won't be, you know, national leading headlines tomorrow, I think is a really sad indictment right now of where we are, especially in a culture that pretends to care so much about, you know, tolerance and love and acceptance and all these, you know, great fun things. And then you see what we're sitting on top of is the corpses of so many children. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but were there also racial quotas? I think I remember that from some of the original reportings, racial quotas and I think gender quotas for some of the fetuses that they were looking for.
Now listen very carefully here. Put this all in context with what we covered at the beginning of this video. The racist, genocidal history, the eugenics program.
Yes, the University of Pittsburgh in the Good Map program had racial quotas for the number of black babies and the number of Hispanic babies and the number of black women and Hispanic women who had to be harvested from for this program. It is one of the most disturbing stories that I've ever reported on.
I hope you heard that, family. Yeah, having quotas means that if you don't reach those quotas, they could cut your funding. So they're heavily invested in getting our females into those abortion clinics to procure their babies' organs. The eugenics movement has never stopped. Let's let it continue.
Most people, when they find out, when they learn the facts about these horrific practices, they're outraged and they want it to stop. The vast majority of people do not support the kind of fetal experimentation that's going on at the University of Pittsburgh and elsewhere. And that's why, again, groups like Pitt and Planned Parenthood will go as far as to lie under oath to try to cover it up. So I think it's very important that we continue to report on these issues, that they get elevated, that they get escalated and highlighted to the highest levels of priority for official oversight and investigation. And hopefully we'll see more of that in the coming weeks and months ahead.
Yes, we hope for that, but we also hope for people to be imprisoned and properly dealt with for harming the defenseless. Okay, now I want to show this clip which explains exactly how long the University of Pittsburgh has been involved in these experiments. And ask yourself, what other CDC, NIH, Planned Parenthood, monopoly has this kind of stuff going on? Fair use, fair use.
The University of Pittsburgh has really been a hub for some of the most barbaric experiments done with aborted baby body parts and even done with whole living aborted infants. There have been whistleblower reports going back to the 1970s of nurses from the University of Pittsburgh training hospital coming forward and telling the Pennsylvania legislature, we're seeing live babies being packed in ice and shipped off to laboratories. The head of Pitt's anatomy department back from the 1930s to the 1950s was doing experiments on live aborted infants. So this has been going on for decades at the University of Pittsburgh.
The 1970s, family. This is nothing new. We're just giving the proper exposure that it should have been getting the whole time. And it's up to you all to get this message out. Be sure to like and share the broadcast so we can expose what's been going on under everyone's nose. Okay, so now we'll get into the weak pushback from Planned Parenthood and their media cronies who claim that none of what you saw throughout this video has been going on. In other words, don't believe your lying eyes. But then from time to time, Planned Parenthood comes out with a conflicting message that sounds like this. Fair use, fair use.
The head of Planned Parenthood is testifying before Congress today about how the company has been selling aborted baby body parts. Congress is investigating after undercover videos exposed the practice. Planned Parenthood President Cecile Richards is defending their role in harvesting babies' organs. She says they're proud to help with fetal tissue research. Opponents say they're breaking federal laws by profiting from fetal tissue sales and altering abortion procedures to obtain usable organs. They want Congress to stop shelling out $500 million in taxpayer funds for Planned Parenthood every year. But Congress is working to pass a short-term spending bill that does not end the abortion giant's funding.
Now you just saw Planned Parenthood essentially admitting to the fact that they were selling aborted fetal tissue, yet they're using their media machine and other outlets to blatantly lie. And this is pretty much what they do every single time they're exposed. They recently got caught up with some stomach-churning emails, negotiating quote-unquote donations in exchange for fetal parts. It seems like almost every month there's something new. So there should be no secret as to why I don't care when Planned Parenthood, a known psychopathic, demonic, racist eugenics butcher shop is getting defunded, which happened recently under this administration. Similar to how the FBI cut ties with the SPLC, which I also reported on, a very important video. If you haven't seen it already, Planned Parenthood is also getting cut off from federal funding, which it felt entitled to. I mean, it had been taking our tax dollars for years, so it just got used to the funding. And again, similar to how the SPLC had millions and millions in funding coming from quote-unquote grants and contributions, Planned Parenthood gets about 43% of its $1.29 billion from government grants and reimbursements. That's $553.7 million, which our tax dollars are paying for. And there's a reason why the government does this. Planned Parenthood has historically been used so that the government's not directly held liable for practicing eugenics against us. It just indirectly funds our extermination instead of directly being involved. And I'll prove that with the last video that we'll show today. Fair use, fair use.
At one time, it was common to hear politicians and elected officials openly talking about the need for population control in the black community, or saying things like $1 spent on family planning is worth $5 spent on economic development. But since we don't hear that sort of thing anymore, it would be easy to conclude that the government is not still involved in black genocide, but that's not the case. Look, it's no longer necessary for the government to be directly involved in black genocide because that's what they hired Planned Parenthood for. I mean, it can't just be a coincidence that at the same time when government population control programs were backing away from specifically targeting black neighborhoods, at that same time, the state and federal funding for Planned Parenthood was being increased by leaps and bounds. To understand the magnitude of the dollars involved here, remember this: by 1970, Planned Parenthood was already the 19th largest health-related fundraising organization in the country. But by year 2000, it had moved into third place behind only the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society. And a major factor in that phenomenal growth was government funding. Basically, what's happened over the last 40 years or so is that Planned Parenthood has taken billions in government money while locating the vast majority of its facilities in minority neighborhoods. And that has not only been a tremendous boost for the eugenics movement, but it has also allowed government-funded family planning programs to target the black population while insulating the government from any direct connection to black genocide.
That video was from 2009, and this is still happening to this day. And I want to point this out real quick. You see, Planned Parenthood has 43% of its revenues from the government. Now, for anyone who knows business, very few industries have a 20% profit margin. Now, could you imagine your business having 43% of its profits guaranteed? I mean, take a look at this. Grocery stores, for the most part, have a 1 to 3% profit margin. Restaurants are very similar. But Planned Parenthood knows, hey, no matter what, 43% of my profits are going to be guaranteed. And this is why, when Planned Parenthood was defunded, in previous years, it just kept billing the states as if they had to pay for these murderous services. I mean, just completely entitled to federal, state, and local tax dollars. So no, I won't be shedding any tears for Planned Parenthood or any of the other organizations who are catching heat during the Trump administration. These eugenics enthusiasts target our neighborhoods, kill our children, and then collect profits on the back end through organ harvesting. That's their hidden abortion hustle, which got fully exposed today. So thank you for tuning in with me to the end. May we all keep our children safe and properly educated as far as this wicked practice. It has no place in the FBA B1 community. Now, with all that being said, I do want to shout out some of the contributors to the channel. Shout out to brothers Cyberdime100, Black RU, Sean Edwards, and Sister Bad72. Much respect. Now, with all that being said, be one and be blessed, family. Peace.